Cho Dong-il sounds very extreme and may have been false. I agree with Dr. Park's assessment that Cho fails to take into account the fact that allegorical fables reemerged as a literary medium for modern enlightenment in modern Korean newspapers. I am also wondering how the modern Korean novels are different from the modern Korean newspapers, and perhaps more importantly, whether it is possible that the allegorical fables, for example, the fabulous court case stories, significantly contributes to the modern Korean newspapers without significantly contributing to the modern Korean novels. Um, Here are a few different ways to ask my last question. What is the dialect of this paper? What is the disagreement between contemporary literary historians, for example, Cho Dong-il and Professor Park?
Oh, thank you so much. And so, do you want to give some kind of short response to the questions raised by Min?
Yes, I'm really grateful to Professor Min Tang's comments. So actually, her questions are actually very deep, I think. So probably I need more time to answer her questions. But it's kind of aesthetic significance of the fabulous court case fiction is that actually because it is really different from modern European novel, so which is centering on realism novel. So many criticisms, literary criticisms have centered on the emergence of realism novel in modern European culture. And this is also very, two literary historians, both Europe, Western and Eastern, considered as a kind of very important factor of modern civilization. So, in relation to emergence of modern nationalism, so there's always emergence of modern novel, something like that, and modern novel represents kind of realism, so kind of a realist representation of national culture and national people, something like that. So I mean, if we study literature, then we cannot escape from this kind of ideology of modern realism novel. So which became kind of idealistic literature, literary genre today. So that's why. So I wanted to take much interest in this genre because which is really different from modern realism novel. But actually, actually in this kind of fantastical, fabulous fiction, actually, we can find kind of reality, and so this even fantastical fabulous fiction can represent what is real, and even, you know, very technical knowledge of law, something like that. So that's why I'm really, you know, I'm interested in this kind of genre. And actually, for the other questions, maybe I need more, you know, time to think about.
So then, is there any other? I think we have like 2 or 3 minutes for Soyeon. So if you have any question, you can ask, and otherwise we can discuss together for discussion session. Anyone? Oh, Hannah.
I'm sorry, no, I was just waving goodbye to, Sorry.
Oh no.
I don't.
Oh, so I just can ask a brief question. I didn't read this story, but according to your description, except the fact that the characters are the animals, all the stories is very realistic. So I just want to, because I haven't read how in what sense is it fantastic, except that the main characters are animals.
I mean, anyway, yeah, they're you know, depicting actually they're all like, you know, talking animals. So in that sense, I think you know, this you know, fable is fantastic, and yeah, clearly fiction is fictitious, right? Fictitious. So, but on the other hand, yes, right. This story is adhering to legal writing form. So in that sense, so all these depiction of legal procedure is just factual. And there's no room for kind of fantastic representation of law. Yeah.
Can I add what I learned from the Soyeon, the presentation? Because as far as I know, Soyeon is trying to say Korean modernity may not be like examined by Western kind of yardstick of what is being modernity, something like that. So what for example, we do not call like Animal Farm, I mean, contemporary novel as a pre-modern novel because it used the form of fable, something like that. And then she found that this unique novel, which is written in, very special Korean transliteration system, Ibu, is it has very unique, like kind of value because it is not really pre-modern style of novel which you can find in Joseon Dynasty, and then it is not really adopted kind of so-called Western modern style of writing. So it is actually found in between these kind of struggle or endeavor to move forward so-called modernization. So that's why she kept saying it is very realistic fiction you can find from this novel, but which is not counted as a modern novel by Western educated people, something like that. So yeah, this is my impression. Thank you.
So is this, I mean,
Thank
her
you.
description of this fiction can fall into your conception of naturalist or Chaeyeon? Like
Kind of, yes.
automatic?
Yeah, that is exactly why I think these examples are echoing to kind of my claim is kind of, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. And now the discussion session will be chaired by Marilyn. And so I'm going to move my position to, where is Marilyn? Really? Oh, yeah, okay. Thank you. So, and
Please,
please,
please join
welcome.
me thanking Young-san
I mean,
for great moderation. Yeah, thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I learned, I don't think I've learned this much in one sitting in a long time. So I really appreciate that. And so what I wanted to do for the discussion section right now is I wanted to say a few things. Just, I'm not going to talk for a long time. I just want to talk for a couple minutes about some of the common themes I saw through the papers and just raise a couple questions and then just open it up for discussion, and also to make sure we get in any questions that there wasn't time to answer in the individual Q&A sessions. So as the papers have started to unfold, one of the themes that has been most interesting to me and intriguing that I've seen running through each of the papers is what I was originally going to call or suggest we call like a kind of cultivated naturalism or an aestheticized naturalism. And then, of course, we want to take seriously and into consideration Sarah's suggestions about some of the problems with the term nature, its potential contrast with artifice, art, and even aesthetics. So I'm going to piggyback on some of Sarah's insights too, and then still go ahead and use this term cultivated naturalism. And so by saying that I'm seeing a cultivated naturalism in Korean aesthetics, I don't mean to say that you all are naturalizing art or that the Korean tradition is naturalizing art, because the problem with that would be to take nature as a metaphysical principle and then apply it to art. And I think that's much too strong of a metaphysical move. Like, I don't think in naturalizing art, we should treat nature as a principle or some sort of domain that can then get applied to aesthetics or art. But what I am hearing coming out of the Korean aesthetic tradition and Korean philosophy is an opportunity more to aestheticize nature, and as opposed to naturalizing art. And I was thinking of one of my very favorite quotes from Oscar Wilde is that life imitates art far more often than art imitates life. So that was running through my mind through a lot of the papers. So of course, starting with Hannah's paper, one of the things I was struck with was, of course, bringing together affect and reason. And in Hannah's paper, when she was speaking, I was thinking, yeah, it's not just that affect complements reason, but that affect can serve as reason too. And I thought that the examples that you used really illustrated that. And I would suggest that one of the ways that affect serves as reason is that it brings a kind of aesthetic wholeness. It brings resolution and completion, just as the metaphor did in the argument between the two Neo-Confucian scholars, right? So this is why, and on the one hand, I liked your suggestion that there was an emotional intimacy and engagement brought about by the metaphor that allowed them to just let the argument settle. But I also think a metaphor can be a bit of a mic drop. A metaphor can really just bring things together and end the conversation because it brings aesthetic wholeness to it. And in that sense, we might ask what metaphors do, not just what they mean. And I think that another place that we see this aesthetic wholeness is with nature, right? And so I have no answer to this question, but I'm now intrigued with the question of what kind of naturalizing metaphor would look like. And then, of course, we see this, cultivated naturalism writ large in the talk on personification and the mountains, and Ko Yeon-hee's paper, harmonizing the similar and the dissimilar in art as in nature, but without collapsing the differences between things, and maybe without collapsing even the contradictions between things. And so I thought that was really kind of a nice segue, for me at least, of like how we might naturalize metaphor into looking at how we personify nature. And then we get to Dobin's paper, we move into human nature more directly, right? But rather than human nature as something like a metaphysical principle or essence, human nature as something profoundly aesthetic, right? Where human nature is defined by taste, a fundamentally aesthetic capacity. So again, there's a kind of cultivated naturalism or naturalized aesthetics going on there. And I loved this question about the causes of human nature in the heart. And I'm wondering if maybe the causes of human nature in the heart aren't actually aesthetic causes, or at least they are perceived as such by the heart. And so one of the implications there would be that separation between the metaphysical and the epistemological that Dobin talked about, that drives human nature into practice, moral practices, but I would also suggest aesthetic practices, would be that drive, we might read that drive as an aesthetic movement too. And maybe even more than epistemological, possibly. So that's a potential suggestion. And then moving on to So Jung's paper and thinking about cultivated naturalism in terms of the contradictory expressions of beauty. There, I was really struck at the beginning with this idea of the great artwork as one where we can't tell whether it's human or natural, right? So this would really be the kind of culmination of what I'm calling a kind of cultivated naturalism. And I was thinking here, So Jung, of Zhuangzi's idea of the heavenly transitions between things, where he tells us to attend to, this is where opposites no longer have the same friction that they do when we're experiencing things, say, via language or via our normal concepts. And the way that an artwork, exactly what you just said, that these contradictions not only can exist within an artwork, but are almost required by the artwork there. And then I was also wanted to connect, So Jung, your paper to Dobin's with this suggestion that of a kind of taste that brings generosity and tolerance, the big savory taste idea. And again, seeing this move from a kind of like naturalized taste as just like what the mouth might taste, a savory taste, and this slide then to taste as something that's moral or involves etiquette and ethics there. And then finally, on this theme of cultivated naturalism, we have this great blurred boundary between what's fantastic and realistic and what's fiction and what's true. And again, the anthropomorphizing of nature, but this time with animals and plants rather than mountains. And again, asking ourselves what a fable does. Does it function in the way that a metaphor does? And what would it look like to, say, look to nature for examples of how fables and metaphors are operating for human beings? Something like, can nature do this too? So I'll just leave it there with that sort of question of, what happens when we really blur the nature art distinction, as I think all of these papers do in one way or the other. So those are some thoughts. Sorry, they're not entirely well formed. It's a little bit late here, and this is like my first pass at thinking about Korean aesthetics, but maybe that gives you some things to think about. And then let's just open it up for discussion. We can talk about anything I just mentioned, or if anybody has any questions they want to bring up to one of the speakers that they didn't get a chance to ask, just go for it.
Can I ask a
I
very
think
practical
Yoni,
question?
okay, yeah, question first. Okay, question. Sorry. Because
So
I know that Yoni has a present, PPT slides for her answer. So please, later you can invite Yoni to present. Okay, please, Octavian.
Oh, I just wanted, I didn't get a chance to write down the link from the last presentation. So is it possible to put it in the chat? The link to the book.
I believe we have the whole PDF file,
Oh,
right?
was that shared? Was that
Yeah.
shared?
But can you re-upload the like proceedings? You are
Okay.
talking about.
Sure, but I don't think her PowerPoint was in that.
Oh, okay.
I
That
didn't
link
see
was,
it.
yeah, within her PowerPoint.
Oh, okay, okay.
Oh, thank you.
Right? Me?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, if there is no question, then
Yeah,
because
because I didn't
right.
reply Professor Kim Dae-won's commentary. So, in the break time, I made the presentation, PPT. Like this. Yeah, first, can you see my PPT?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Professor Kim is not here. Anyway, I find her questions very helpful in making my discussions more meaningful and convincing as they expanded the direction and scope of my thinking. So I'm quite grateful. First of all, she asked about different imagination by a different gender. So the female aspect, actually, in fact, women in the Joseon dynasty couldn't enjoy hiking or traveling to the nice mountains far away. The wonderful poems composed after travel, written in nice Chinese characters, were left behind by men of highly educated class who were carried around on carriages. It means sedan chair by their slaves. There are many songs by wives complaining, saying, if I were a man, I really enjoy climbing. Or some woman assumed that there must be a wonderful drinking house full of beautiful ladies in Gungang Mountain because their husband
But,
enjoyed to climbing the Gungang Mountain. Or
Peter,
there
I
was
don't think we can see the picture. Are you
Oh.
talking about the picture, right? But
Mm,
we cannot see because slides is not moving.
okay,
forward.
I will show you the first my reply for the reply to the female aspect. Some story of a lady who climbed mountains dressed as a man. At the end of Joseon Dynasty, more women also began to go to Gungang Mountain to write about their hiking, but they didn't use much of the metaphorical rhetoric shown by male scholars. Rather, women's writings from that time are characterized by the expression of autobiographical elements. How can I say? There are one particular impressions or self-description, the kind of thing. The men who wrote poems about Gungang Mountain were intellectuals who knew the rules of rhetoric and knew what to express. So it was a good indication of the literary characteristic of the time, placed from a male-dominated perspective. But I will certainly take a closer look at whether there are any special metaphors used by women. Yeah. Secondly, only in the case of Gungang Mountain, is the second question. Yes, and many of you complained about this kind of thing, universal, yeah. I will reply to the second question in two ways. First, what about other mountains? A few days ago, I was asked by a publisher to write a commentary on a huge folding screen painting, which is regarded as a painting of Mountain Gungang. They thought it must be Mountain Gungang. The folding screen is marked by a series of human beings, shaped peaks, but when I looked more closely, I realized that it is in fact Mountain Myohyang. It's a very rare case. Another beautiful mountain located in the northwestern part from Kumgang Mountain. Although most travelogues and paintings about Korean scenery focus on Mountain Kumgang, and it seems that the method used to describe Mountain Kumgang has been applied to description and writings on other mountains as well. I will study further to see whether we need a meaningful comparative analysis. Actually, this one is from So-hyun's presentation. You know, these are rocks. I think Korean people really enjoyed this kind of changing. Yeah, I study more about that. And the relationship between land and spirit, such as Western geomancy or Chinese feng shui. I don't know a lot about Western geomancy, but about the feng shui, in fact, this is a very different story. The culture of expressing natural scenery solely from the perspective of feng shui developed in China and Korea. It's quite different from literary metaphors because it really identified the mountain as organic living beings that control the lives of human beings and the futures. There are cases where the shape of mountain, which is, show you, this painting, it's about the beautiful scene around the Kumgang Mountain. But in this case, the mountain shape gives good luck. Looks like a shape surrounded by phoenix wings or the shape of lotus flower blooming. These images were professionally drawn, especially for in locating burial sites or tombs or important places. In Korea, visual data with feng shui metaphors increased rapidly in the late Joseon dynasty. But I think this is an area where discussions in different directions are required. I don't think my answer is not sufficient to fully respond to Professor Kim's excellent questions. But I hope that it provides some additional clarification and information. I will try to answer these questions in future research. Thank you. Yeah, to Professor Kim Gae-won. That's all.
Can I hear you?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just was saying thank you. And then shall we open it up to some more general questions? Maybe so Joe was one.
Yes, thank you.
Go
I
ahead,
have
yeah.
comment and question about the naturalness as aesthetic evaluative term, and yeah, and from Sarah's point, I'd like to apply to contemporary culture of Korea. I believe the one interesting example of natural beauty comes from Korean cosmetics. I heard from my wife that the ideal of K-beauty, there is section in Macy's of K-beauty, is appearing as if no makeup, as if there is no makeup, achieving transparent ideal of naturalness by full makeup, by doing full makeup. So that's one of the paradoxical application of the aesthetic term of naturalness, and many K things are achieved by that kind of efforts. Do the maximal of artificial effort to reach the level of non-artificiality. So that's one of the contemporary culture, how people react to the culture. And many Koreans consume luxurious goods. Even teenagers buy $1,000 T-shirts from Gucci and they wear it as if it is common cheap Old Navy T-shirts. That's the one of the way to show their flex of their wealth. And that could be a key to understand the ideal of naturalness in Korean aesthetic evaluative terms. That's my just thoughts about that. And Blackpink has hit that mark. Their music videos and shows are really carefully designed. However, they act as if there is no pre-designed actions.
Hannah?
Yeah, just a follow-up. As I was listening to Tobin and this kind of makeup look and the philosophy behind that, like that you actually need a lot of artifice or practice in order to achieve this natural look. It made me think of just like Taoism, or like even like Butcher Ding in that example where it seems so effortless and he's just going with the flow and he's not even exerting any like power, but the work is getting done or something. And I felt like whatever we want in terms of how do we put it? It was cultivated naturalism, like that's different from Wu Wei, right? And if so, what is the difference? Or is this like a Korean Wu Wei? I guess that's kind of now the question I have. Like, what is the relationship between these two concepts, if any? Will it be helpful to think of them together or not? So, just thinking out loud here.
Yeah, that's a question. And I mean, Wu Wei can be kind of cultivated naturalness if you're a Confucian, where it can be a process as opposed to kind of an empty forgetting process, more like we see with the Taoists. But we see active cultivation with the Taoists too. I obviously can't speak to if the idea of Wu Wei exists in Korean philosophy, but I like kind of where you're going with this. Back to the Taoists too, because one of the things I was thinking of when Dobin was speaking about like full makeup to achieve the no makeup look was I was thinking, I wonder if nature works this hard to achieve its naturalness. Like maybe we've made a mistake about nature where it's like nature's all natural. Maybe it's the case that nature has to like go into full makeup to achieve its no makeup look. Like what looks so natural on the surface takes a ton of work.
I think it's my current thing because I mean, or the in front of me already respond to your comments and above all, I would like to thank you and I really appreciate your comprehensive comment how these different ideas and different papers are interconnected with each other. So that part's really I appreciate, and it will be I think the place we are starting kind of new project again. And regarding, I really regret for that I couldn't finish and I couldn't talk about the concept cluster, the idea of concept cluster, with which or through which I explain nature. So, or Jaeyeon. I'm not really saying that Jaeyeon is always used every time in a sense that being nature, but rather what I'm trying to it works as a concept cluster. What I wanted to say is it's like Tao. It's like Tao. So I mean, we do not really use use the term Jaeyeon or word Jaeyeon, but we still imply it or reminding it by saying kind of making the expressions which is in contradictory structure, or as Tobin said, something which is achieved nature or being nature, something like kind of anyway. I mean, I haven't I haven't produced my final version of how can I make this spectrum? How can I show these shallow parts of the meaning of Jaeon and up to the very profound concept of nature, which is implied in certain aesthetic as a artistic idea or aesthetic idea. So, yeah, sorry for not being able to give a full answer, but instead I'd like to answering some questions, some remaining questions from Sarah, because it is related to what I'm trying to say regarding naturalism. And I have another question too. Have you written on the cultivated naturalism, or that term is just like entertained, or just yeah, in your mind, or you have written on it?
Me?
Yeah, cultivated naturalism. I like that concept, but I do not know what
I
it
think
is.
I think I just often think of the Chinese tradition, particularly the Taoists, that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you haven't used this term?
Have I used it? Probably, but not officially, like, in any
Okay.
written.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah.
Yes, I like it. One of all right. Because I'd like to just say, okay, from the you are, I mean, Sarah and Mei-Lin, you are kind of okay, Taoist people or Zhuangzi people or people who know this concept basically. So if I starting from that, I would like to say that in order to understand Koreanized Jaeon, the Koreanized concept of Jaeon, there is one good way to start from. I mean, meaning that the shared idea of Taoist Jaeon, Taoist Zhiran. Okay, I admit that. But as actually Sarah, I think slightly mentioned before, actually, if you like trace back the conceptual history, how this concept has been handed down and reinterpreted, then we can see the difference. That is my claim. So I'm not saying that Jaeon is completely different from Zhiran. They are connected. I think they started to, as Sarah said, I mean, Taoist Jaeon is kind of just giving us kind of very typical sense of kind of combination of opposite, just linguistically something like that. Then what I'm claiming to is Korean people has been conceptualizing it. So that's why Jaeon is not only used as an adjective or adverb. Of course, there is an important, significant use of Jaeon as adjective and adverb in Korean too. But as a concept cluster, Jaeon has been like kind of, how to say, ascended to some kind of at the level of Tao or something. So, and then they like revisit that concept, whether they really, I mean, clearly or like, I mean, pronounce that concept or not. That is so sometimes it is hidden, but we feel that when, as I said, when Go Yu-sun mentioned those kind of, he produced a lot of different expressions, but we feel that, oh, he's talking about Taiwan. You understand me? It's not just adjective. It's not just adverb. But Yeonhee, do you have any one?
Yeah, I have one
reply to them?
opinion about your discussion.
Right? Okay.
The Jaeon used by Yanagi could be related to the Western concept, translated from Western words. So I think the naturalist is not it could be could not be related to a real Korean art. I think we have to check the concept of Jaeon, the nature, used by Yanagi or used by Eric.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you have to check what kind of Japanese work was valued as natural by Yanagi. So I think the naturalist cannot be the important concept of the Korean art, but it was kind of in the discourse in the modern time. So I think your focus must be the discourse about the nature in the modern time. So usually, always naturalist was always naturalist is a perfect situation. It's not by
Where,
human
where?
beings.
Where? In Korea?
Yanagi,
Or?
yeah, natural.
No, no, no.
It's natural.
No, no,
So
no.
Tobin
I mean,
said, Tobin said,
yeah.
the
Actually, this time actually, I have examined all the examples or all the cases appearing in Yanagi's work. I mean, regarding Jaeon, season, and then I found that there is some kind of mixture and some kind of confusion even, because in the period of time when Yanagi used the term, actually modern Japanese scholars started to use season 4 translation of a modern Western term of Zion, but it was not very how to say, it's just after that. So if you see refer to the paper how this concept season was introduced and accepted and widely kind of used, then the time is not beforehand. There was a lot of candidates, a lot of other candidates. For example, Wanyo, so everything, or Wanwu, or even a lot of other candidates actually compete to be translation of nature at the time. And season was accepted, but at the time, I don't think so for example, Japanese thinkers, all of a sudden okay, abandon the traditional meaning of season, and okay, from now on, I would like to use season in modern sense. I don't think that is possible. So in this sense, actually, there was actually variation and kind of transformation of the modern concept of Zion from transformation into Zion from, or season from, the traditional concept of season in Japan. So that's why I said that I should compare all this different conceptual history from Japan and China and Korea. So that's why there is a still kind of big area there, because I cannot be that much accurate when I see the modern conceptual history of Japan. I'm quite sensible and sensitive towards my Korean use of Zion, but for the season, I can just trace back through the documents. But my answer is to Yanagi's Zion is also not just in single sense, as far as I know, from my kind of tracing back to his work. Yeah, sometimes you're right, because he accepted that basic kind of distinct human nature distinction. But sometimes he just draw the traditional meaning and then mix up something like that. Okay, sorry, I said too much.
Okay, so we have about 4 minutes. Who's got a question that they want to? Dobin, you have another one?
Yeah, I have a question to Hannah's metaphor. I think that analogical reasoning is very important in philosophical development. Aristotle used it, and Mencius always used it, analogy. And we can even understand Plato's Republic as a kind of analogical reasoning. And I'm curious how you distinguish using metaphor in philosophical discourses compared to analogical reasoning. That I kept thinking about how to make the distinction. In that case, in the person rides a horse, that could be regarded as an analogical reasoning. However, the metaphor used by the correspondence between the two could be just metaphor. Do you have any thoughts about that distinction?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I was almost thinking, well, is metaphorical thinking just analogical thinking? And so, like, what's common between them two? Both look for similarities, right? Analogies work because there's some similarity that you're pointing to. Metaphors work because there's some similarity that you're drawing your attention to. I guess, if you want to be nitpicky about it, you can get an analogy with simile because something is like something, but metaphor is it's a literal falsehood, right? Like Juliet is not the sun, although there are aspects that are like the sun. So I'm sure people have made a lot of that distinction, where similes are always true. Not always, sorry, like can be true. Metaphors can't, unless they're tautologies, like business is business.
Right.
But yeah, and so I mean that's a good question. Like, is there a form of reasoning that is metaphorical that is different from analogical? So yeah, I mean, I'd be curious if anyone else has thoughts on this. I'm happy to open up the floor, but
Right.
yeah, but the simile metaphor distinction is the only one I can think about right now.
Yeah, thanks. I have the question when I read Mencius, how to approach that analogy or metaphor. Yes, thank you.
Can I use just 1 minute for answering to Sarah's question, because Sarah must be very tired. It's very late, 1 a.m. or
It's
something,
more
right?
one.
So I'd like to, just very shortly, because I mean you raise a lot. I mean, very interesting question. I have been always thinking of. So because I do not know the objective very well, but I have thought about the Korean rap music for a long time, because I mean usually beforehand, before before 1992, when 서태지와 아이들, kind of old idol group, was formed and they developed the Korean rap. Actually, our kind of perception of rap is we cannot make rap style music, because we thought that the rhyme and kind of Korean language itself is not sufficient or not proper or appropriate for making rap. Okay, yes, that was so. That's why I think that people do not think about that kind of development that much, and then now they are seeing and observing, watching this contemporary successful Korean pop music now. But what I wanted to say is there is nothing, something just pop up without any this kind of continuity. So I mean, there is one thing. So regarding your question of Korean pop music, their success is not just pursuing to be natural, pursuing being natural, but rather kind of how do they formulate other way around, and how they struggle with a kind of new style, accepting and then but changing and transforming, etc. And then the other actually another very contemporary example I would like to actually include my paper was 삑사리 in Bong Joon-ho's the poem. Have you heard? Yeah, Bong Joon, Parasite. And a lot of, I mean, he it was not just coined by himself, but other, I think, if I remember correctly, the French, I think, journalist, he was during the interview with Bong Joon-ho. I mean, the journalist, maybe I'm wrong, but as far as I know, he described Bong Joon-ho's style as 삑사리. As you know, the 삑사리 means that 삑사리 doesn't just happen to be whether when you make mistake. If you just make mistake all the time, it is not 삑사리. Very, I mean, if you almost reach there and the perfection, but there is a kind of I don't know, not just failing, maybe intended failure. That is 삑사리. So I mean, so this what I'm trying to say. So what I'm trying to say is there is a lot of interesting topics we can talk about regarding yeah, contemporary Korean arts and music and film. I mean, with in terms of concept of Zion. I don't know. I don't want to actually. I agree with Maylene. I don't want to just call this kind of thing as a naturalism. I'm resisting it. But then how can I call? So we need a concept, right? So that's what I'm struggling with. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. It's
Um,
late.
it's so yeah, should we wrap up? It's 10:03. I know for some of you it's early, for some of you you're getting into the middle of the night.
Yeah.
What do you think? Should we wrap up? Yeah.
Yeah, I think wait for another the next one.
In the next meeting, we develop the vocabulary.
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you so much for all. If anyone haven't have chance to what is that like say something and but want to say something, that just give us a quick comment, and otherwise I'd like to wrap up. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all, and especially the Eastern people. Yeah, thank you so much. And
Thank
I
you
will
so much.
contact you
Thank you.
soon. And I hope to see
Thank
you in
you.
person soon too. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. 우리는 좀 나가야 될 것 같은 기분이 막 들죠. 뭔가 이게
진짜?
좀 약간 그런 기분이. 근데 최대 선생님 땡큐하고 나갔네. 땡큐하고 바로 나갔어.
소정 쌤 오늘 너무너무 애썼어요. 자리에
완전.
2kg는 빠졌겠다.
진짜 좀 팔짱 빠진 거 같지 않아요?
아,
이거 녹화되니까 빨리
근데
써야 돼.
여기선 덥다. 오늘 좀
녹화하고.
더워요. 지금 서울이.